when I worked in the law firm, I felt like I had not earned anything. I felt like nothing was mine. And that was the mothership. Everything came from the law firm. Like the car that I bought wasn't mine. The apartment that I bought wasn't mine because that was what they wanted us to believe.
This is the Fearless Pricing Podcast, where we meet and talk about real life pricing experience. I'm your host, Filip Fucic.
Hello and welcome back to the Fearless Pricing Podcast. Today we have Donna Cravotta, and her story about creating something out of nothing is something that I would like you to hear. Donna, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I come from Brooklyn, New York, and a little part of Brooklyn called Sheepshead Bay, which is a fishing village in Brooklyn.
Okay.
That it's not trendy Brooklyn like you probably have heard about. It's old school Brooklyn. And then I worked my way into Manhattan and worked in law firms for many years and started my business 17 years ago. And I help people reconnect with their stories and become visible to the right people that they want to connect with. And that's how they grow their businesses. That's how they grow their visibility, their relationships, and their connections. And it took a while to get there. When I first left my job to start my business, my son was 4 years old and I'm a single parent and I was commuting, and working in law firms is not conducive to single parenting. So I realized I had to do something else, and I learned of a virtual assistant in Florida, and she just became like my mantra. And I was like, if she could do it, I could do it, because working from home was like the best possible option. And I just started a virtual assistance business. I quit my job. I was going to do both at the same time for a year to see how that worked. 2 weeks into that, it was 9 o'clock at night. I'm eating ice cream for dinner. And like, I had to get home because the babysitter had to get home. And I was like, I just can't do this. This isn't going to work. And I said to the guy behind the counter of the ice cream shop that I was quitting my job. And I just started laughing. And he was like, I don't care. So I went in the next day, I quit my job. And as a single parent, I started a virtual business in 2006, and nobody had virtual businesses in 2006. So I would go to these networking things. Nobody knew what I was doing. So I would just do whatever I had to do to make money. So I organized Chinese themed bat mitzvahs. I put footers on documents. I cleaned closets. I handled tax documents. I did whatever I had to do until things started to come together. And then my first like real client in my business was a hand model. And she had a line of anti-aging hand care products that she needed to sell. And she had hired a PR firm in New York City and paid them $5,000 a month to get her into big beauty publications and magazines and blogs. And they did. They got her into all these things, but they didn't sell anything because they didn't know how to market. This was before PR and marketing kind of came together. They were two separate things. And it was the very beginning of social media, which I jumped on board with very quickly. And they didn't know how to do social media, and they wanted me to teach them. And I'm thinking, okay, she's paying them $5,000 a month. She was paying me $600 a month. And I was managing her website. I learned how to do SEO. I was writing all of her copy. I was doing all of her social. I was doing all of these things for $600 a month. And then I said to her, well, what if we flip this script and you fire the PR agency, pay me more money, and I will take everything that they gathered for you, all of the press, and we'll turn it into other things, and I'll leverage that on social media, and we'll sell your products. So that's what we did. And in an 8-month period, we sold over $100,000 worth of hand cream. And her products were bought by a company, and she was on HSN, which is like one of those home shopping. She was on 12 times, sold out twice. And then she was acquired by a bigger company, and they created a whole line of skincare products under her name. And she attributes all of that to me flipping the script on her business and leveraging social media. I had one of the first 100 Hootsuite accounts
Oh, wow.
when they first came out. And I was tracking the hashtag dry hands in 3 time zones. So I would, at 11 o'clock at night in my time zone, I would sit down and I would look at all of the comments about dry hands. And I would get into conversations with people around their dry hands. And then I'd say, oh, would you like a 20% off coupon for our luxurious hand cream? And then we would start getting the little ding ding of the shopping cart.
Wow. in the middle of the time zones that I mostly work with, right? So the North American ones and the Australian ones. So yes, the most productive time for me to post things is about midnight my time, so 11 p.m. or midnight, because then everybody gets it. So some of them in the morning, some of them in the evening. But yes, I understand that plight. Tell me what's your what I should have charged story
Oh, well,
now.
when I first like, one of the ways I grew my business
Hmm.
is I would just always like what people needed, right? So a client would ask for something, so I'd say, "Okay, I'll create something," and I'd sell it to them, and I'd get paid to create the next product. But, like, most of the time when I would do that, like, I started to do strategy sessions when I had a group program, and the first strategy session, I think I charged $200, and I charged, like, $2,000. But
Okay.
I still got paid to do it. I got paid to create a service, so that's the way I viewed it. I didn't know what I was doing because I started this business out of necessity. I needed to be home for my child. I came from a place where my budgets were really big. I was running like multi-million dollar projects. So going from that to working with small businesses, I didn't know how to price myself. I didn't know like, and everything I was doing was new. It was social media, it was websites, it was email marketing. It was 2006. There were a handful of people doing this stuff. And
That's
I
some
had
pioneering stuff there.
yeah, I had no idea how to price myself. And there were no courses. It's not like now where you can just like get information from all over the place. There was nothing. We were really making it up as we were going along. What I got into the habit of doing was trying things out based on what clients needed. I wouldn't charge them much money. And then I would figure out what needed to be done. And I always viewed it as getting paid to build the next version of my business. Even if I was underpaid, at least I was getting paid something. And it made me feel like there was value in up leveling my business. And because I did that from the very beginning of my business, that's been a habit. Like, I have a friend that I've been friends with for a long time, and, every time I say I'm gonna, like, build something new or I have an idea, she goes, "I wonder who's gonna pay." But that service that I did with the hand model is pretty much what I still do. It's changed over the years, but it's pretty much the same thing, and now that service starts at $5,000.
Yeah. Because now you know the revenue that it can bring, right? Now you can show them the other people's results. Now you can, right? Very cool. So when did this start to change? So you used
Well,
to charge very little. What made you? So you told me about the $5,000 story,
mhm.
where you basically said, well, if I'm doing what they should be doing for $5,000 now, I should be earning that, not them, right? You borrowed their pricing, which is a very cool tactic. What other factors? How did you get to your service that now starts at $5,000?
Well, from that, I did that with a couple of clients, and they all had great success, and I built it into a group program. And I had 200 people in the group program. And this is another story you'll like. So I started it and I really like it started, it was going to be a couple of PDFs and a few videos. So I charged people $500 for lifetime access. And I immediately got like 75 people in there. And then it grew into like this 12 module program that covered social media, SEO, PR, content development, all of these things and social listening. Like I was doing social listening in like 2010. And I was teaching people how to do this, how to get their own PR. I had one client that she got on big news affiliate 50 times. She was like their go-to expert for sleep. But I had all these people in there that weren't paying me because they had $500 lifetime access. And I was running it through Infusionsoft and it was just like a monster. It was expensive. It kept breaking. It was just a mess. So I had that for a while and then I closed it down because the way that I built it was just not sustainable because I had all those people in there that weren't paying and it was costing me like $10,000 a year just to run the program. So I closed it down. And at the time, I was getting big consulting clients. So just running the two was just like the client base were too diverse and it was just too hard to run the two different things. So I shut down the course and then I was with consulting clients for a while and I got paid a lot of money. but it was like being back in the law firm. I was exhausted. They were so demanding, and the red tape and all the nonsense they had to go through to deal with their structure of their organizations. I had one client that had 7 Eventbrite accounts and 6 Facebook pages and didn't have access to any of them. I mean, it took me months just to untangle things like that. And I was like, I don't want to deal with any of that. So about a year and a half ago, I redesigned my business and I went through everything that I have done in 40 years of working. Like, what did I learn? What do I know? What do I like? What do I not like? What do I enjoy doing? What benefits my clients the most? And I just did this like cleansing of my business and I took out all the things that I didn't want to do. And I created a new version of my business, which is basically what I started doing 17 years ago, not even like maybe 15 years ago. I'm much happier. And to be quite honest, I'm making almost as much money as I was working with the big consulting clients because because my overhead is so much less and my stress level is so much less.
Yes. You can see that on a monthly bill or something, but that's
Mhm.
worth a lot, right?
Yeah, I had a client that paid me hundreds and thousands of dollars. And between what I paid consultants and what I paid in taxes, it
Yeah,
just wasn't worth it. And now, going through that whole process, what it really helped me see too, is it helped me really embrace my own value and what I really bring. And so many of the things that are really special about the work that I do were getting clouded by the minutia of, just dealing with all of that nonsense with these bigger companies and having to do the work I didn't want to do in order to be able to do the work I love to do.
for sure. So it's a really good model to be to get paid to build something, right? It's a good model.
Yeah.
Before we continue, I'd like to suggest 2 things. Firstly, if this is the first time you're tuning in, I'd love for you to subscribe and hear the next story in a week. And second, if you feel you could do with a little more fearless pricing content, look in the show notes for the link to the popular, short, and sometimes funny biweekly newsletter. That's it. Let's get back to the show. The downside of that is that you have to reimagine, rebuild everything from scratch every time. This is how I started as well.
When I started to go through everything, I went back to my first job and I was like, what did I learn? What am I still doing today that I learned 40 years ago? Because it's not just about technology and what's available to us today. You grow as a person, you grow knowledge, you grow experience, you grow wisdom as you do different things. So what I did was I really went through everything that I've done for 40 years. So it wasn't burning it down and starting over. It was more like rearranging the furniture, getting a few new things,
I
a
was
lot of
referring
ups
more to your beginnings.
the
Your
beginnings.
Yeah,
Um,
when you just exited big law firm. So I understand now, after 15 years doing something, pulling back, rearranging stuff, felt much more secure. But I was referring more to the beginning of you were doing whatever needed to be done, right?
mhm.
Right?
When I redesigned my business,
Hmm.
I went back to the experience that I got working in the law firm because I did so many things there that I just never brought into what I'm doing now. It was it created gaps in my story. It created gaps in my abilities. And when I brought them all together, it filled those gaps. So I'm like more of a whole person now. I'm more of a whole professional now. And I'm like, I was able to embrace the things that I really do well and that I enjoy doing and let go of the things that I don't want to do. Like, I never want to build another website again. I don't want to do SEO. I don't want to do any of that stuff ever again.
I can understand that. Fortunately, it doesn't really seem that you will ever have to, the way it seems, right? It makes less and less sense to try to do everything ourselves. So my first business was a startup, and then I was in corporate for 5 years because that startup didn't pan out, and then I got out because my dad was very sick. He is fine today, but back then it was very much not fine. And I started the business which I called Houston because Houston, we have a problem, right? So when you have a problem, you just call me. So whatever it was, if it was business related and not accounting related, I could probably do it.
Mhm.
And I did so many different things. So like you said, whatever needed to be done. And it took me a while, firstly to get away from the per hour model, and secondly to solidify that. So okay, for this client I did A, B, C and pricing, and for the next guy I did D, E and H and pricing. And it took me a while until it solidified in my head that pricing was actually what. So everybody had a guy for something. Oh, you don't have to. I have a guy for this, right? Okay. But nobody had a guy for pricing. And this is why I started really looking into this, and then reading, and then writing, and then now we're here, right? 5 years down the line, I have this podcast, I have a book. It's really, really interesting. I thought I would be
Mhm.
bored by it, but I think you would agree with this. The more you're into, the deeper you get into something, the more you can see more and more interesting things.
Yeah.
So,
When it's the thing you're supposed to be doing, that happens.
yes, I publish a lot of things, and people say, how do you still have something to write about? I have way less time than I have ideas.
Yeah. I
I
know.
have this huge list of things that I still want to say. There's just no time. So how do you prioritize what you talk about?
Well, I'm at the tail end of all of this redesigning of my business, so I don't have all of my talking points all down yet. I'm still in the playing phase with that, but the thing that really gets me excited is like when I can help people reconnect to their own stories, because I think when you've been doing something for a while, you just lose things along the way, whether you think somebody's not interested or you don't think it's relevant, or it's something that you're not comfortable sharing for some reason. And like when I can get somebody at that point where I could see the things that they forgot about, and then I could show it back to them, and like they feel their own pieces coming together. I've had clients that have walked away and never came back because they weren't ready for that yet, or that just broke down and cried because I showed them a version of themselves they forgot about.
Wow.
I had one client who was an author, and we were doing some content planning for her. And I said, give me the stuff from your book that didn't get published. And I created an entire content plan for her out of the stuff that was cut out of her book. And she cried
Oh, wow.
because an editor cut that out because it didn't fit in the book, but that didn't make it any less relevant to her own story.
I've made clients cry. If we're boasting here, with that kind of thing, it was good. It was good because it was people that couldn't come to grips with the idea of them charging, well,
Yeah,
anything close to the value that they were providing. Because who
yeah,
am I to charge this, right?
exactly.
So I always say, do you think that there are some people that would miss you if you stopped working today? Not stop existing, stop working. So you opened up a beach bar and just dropped out of everything business wise. So who would notice and who would care? And if
Mhm.
there are people who would notice and care, there's a reason for this. That means that you're providing value,
Yeah,
right? And money is one of the mechanisms, maybe the main mechanism, how society shows you that they value you, right? And that's fine. It's fine if you provide a lot of value, get paid well. It's there's nothing shameful or greedy about that at all, right? Speaking of which, so you revamped your whole business. I'm guessing that would mean that you changed your pricing policy as well.
really, because my price is pretty good.
Hmm.
This was more about what happened was when I started getting those bigger clients, in order for me to do the work I wanted to be doing and the work that they basically hired me to do, they need they needed all these other things. Like they needed the website, they needed the SEO, they needed videos done. They needed consolidation of their 7 Eventbrite accounts. And so I just started taking on all of these different things that I just didn't want to be doing. And even if I was getting other people to do the work, I was still managing the process. So it really clouded what I really should be doing, and I lost track of that. I had a hole in my own story because I was so focused on all of this other stuff that was just so outside of my zone of genius. And not that I couldn't do it, I didn't want to do it. So I was really getting resentful about the work that I was doing because, like, particularly with this one client, I knew what I could have brought to them if I was allowed to, but they had me stuck in this layer of middle management, little middle management and consultant, which is such a bad combination because they dump all the stuff on you and then you really don't have the power to do anything.
And you're on the hook for it, right?
And
So
look for it. And I'm paying somebody on the other side and like I'm in a situation where I can't charge more money. And I was just like, when I was done with that, I was like, I had 3 clients ready to come on board. And I was just like, I need to stop because if I don't stop, I'm not going to get back to where I need to be. So I basically
so
time
sorry.
off to just clear through all of that and redesign my business in a way I wanted to. So the pricing really stayed the same. It was just I put boundaries around what I wanted to do and what I didn't want to.
Which is a reward in itself. Being able to say no is such a freedom that I that once you lose it, you see what you've lost, right?
Yeah.
So how do you charge for your stuff? You can say the price or not, but how? Is it per project? Is it how do you set the price?
Well, I have a couple of things going on. I have like a group program, so that is a set price for and then when I work with clients, it's typically project based. And I create them flexible. Like one of the things that I started to do was create like an umbrella contract. So the contract is like for a year and it's just like a general contract. And then I add addendums based on if they need extra work. And this kind of protects me from going into scope creep because
Yeah.
with the work that I do, it often brings up opportunities and then the opportunities lead to more work. And in the past, I used to be very reluctant about allowing that to happen, but that stunted my growth and it stunted their growth. And it was all because I didn't want to get stuck into a situation where I was giving more than I was receiving. And that change of the contract really helped because we had our general contract. We didn't have to go into all of that all over again, but it was just like, oh, another project came up. So let's add that project on. So like I've got some clients where we started with addendum A and now we're all the way up to like addendum G or F because the projects just keep coming up, but each project is individual under this umbrella of one big project.
Right. So do you do an initial analysis, I'm guessing?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's usually covered under that strategy that starts at $5,000, depending how much. So a portion of implementation is included in that. But if they want more implementation on top of that, or if it leads into a different strategy, then we get into different layers of projects.
Okay. Okay. So those are your 2 modes. So basically you have a B2C for people for the whole year, and you have let's say a B2B per project, the umbrella contract. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you did
And
work at a law firm, so
yeah. I know how to create a contract. But it works well because it's flexible and then it takes the pressure off of me for scope creep and the clients feel that it's very transparent because I don't want to take on all of the parts of the project. So I work with a lot of different people and I refer out the parts that I don't want to do. So I just don't want to get back to that place again. It was really not fun.
conducive to humanity. I know.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is because I worked in the law firm for so many years, like my brain and my body is conditioned to go into battle mode at any moment. Like one of the things that I had to do when I worked in the law firm, I worked in the mergers and acquisitions department. So when we had a new client, I'd set up what was called a war room with all of the things that were needed that would get locked into this room so nobody would know what was going on in there. So the terminology really speaks to what it was.
For sure.
Yeah.
So after 15 years of being a solopreneur, if I understand correctly,
Mhm.
what would you say what would you say is the worst part for
Well,
you?
there is no worst part. The thing is, if you create something you don't want, you can change it.
Yeah.
And to me, that's whatever kind of situation you get yourself into, you have the capacity and the power to get yourself out.
Also the responsibility.
Yeah, well, but there's responsibility wherever you go.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
did 27 years of hard time in a law firm, and there was so much responsibility. And now I feel like there's less because I'm just responsible for me. And I get to decide what I want to do. And if by 11 o'clock in the morning, if I decide, well, I don't want to do this anymore by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I could have a new business.
Yeah, the capacity to change, even if you're not going to do it, means a lot. It's like snow being one of the greatest things that you can live through as a kid, if you can at any point go into the house and have hot cocoa. And if you're like lost in the woods, it's probably one of the most terrifying things because it keeps falling and covering your tracks and you're lost now. So it's the same depth of snow can be endearing and terrifying depending on whether you can stop. And I think that's a big difference here.
Yeah. It really, when I worked in the law firm, I felt like I had not earned anything. I felt like nothing was mine. And that was the mothership. Everything came from the law firm. Like the car that I bought wasn't mine. The apartment that I bought wasn't mine. All the things acquired were not mine. Because that was what they wanted us to believe.
Yeah.
They wanted to get you. They got kids right out of high school and had them work there their entire lives until they died. Some of them died on the floor. It was literally worked to death. And then, oh, do you have sisters, brothers, cousins, friends? Bring them in. And so now you'd be working there with your friends and your family, and it felt all good and safe, but it really wasn't. They took your safety away. They took your security away. I feel much more secure now. Even though there's been times in my business where I made no money, and there's ups, there's downs. And my son said something profound to me one day. He must have been in like the 4th or the 5th grade, and we were having a rough patch. And he was leaving for school in the morning. And I said, and we were talking about doing something, and I was like, we just need to be careful with money for a bit because business is a little slow. And he looked at me and he said, Mom, I remember a day when I went to school in the morning and you said we had no money. And I came home and you made $30,000 that day. He said, I never worry about money.
That sounds like a good day.
Yeah. If I, like when I was working, I was terrified that something would happen to me because it was just me and him. He didn't want to get on trains. So even when I quit my business, when I quit my job and started my business, I had taken a part-time job for a couple of months. It was awful. And he was totally freaked out because he didn't want me to be far away. He liked having me home. And when I showed him where it was across the street from the train station, and he started to cry and yell at me, and he's like, you're lying. You're going to get on the train. You're going to be far away. I'm going to miss you. What if something happens?
Yeah.
But he had that sense of security, whether there was money coming in the door or not, that I was home. And if he needed me, I was there.
And that's what it's all about, as they say, right? I traded my corporate job for one where I can. So my 7-year-old told me a few days ago that I want to work like you because you never work. I do, but not when he can see me. So he's either in school or he's asleep.
Mhm.
I work until 4 p.m. and then from 9, right?
Mhm.
So for 5 hours every day, I'm with my kids.
Yeah.
So about 7 hours in the morning and 3 at night. So that's about 50-hour week. I cannot, if there's a reason to, and this and that. And my kid thinks that I never work. That's just the way I want it to be. So thank you. This was this took a more familiar turn, but it was very important to hear, I think, and I think helpful and validating to the people listening. So tell me, Donna, where can people find you?
My website, cravottamediagroup.com. Everything is there.
Okay.
Links to all the things.
Okay, I'll put it in the show notes along with your LinkedIn because that's the usual.
Yeah.
Awesome. Is there anything else that you wanted to say to solopreneurs who struggle with their pricing?
Actually, can I say it to you?
Yes.
My son is 21 years old now. You are doing the right thing.
Thank you very much. That means something. It does. I haven't been here for the first couple of years of my first son, Igor's childhood, but the second one was born right in the middle of the pandemic. So I was there for every minute, and I'm very sorry for the time that I wasn't here for the older son. But it's still very early in his life.
Yeah, they do more and more as they get older. So that was the best parenting advice that I ever received.
Well, thank you very much. All right. Thank you for listening to What I Should Have Charged show, and see you next week. Bye.
Thanks for listening. If you would like to hear more, simply subscribe. Until next time, your host, Filip Vojic.